League of Legends, Counter-Strike, Dota, Fortnite. All esports that have been filling up entire arenas for almost a decade. Even Call of Duty is having millions of dollars in cash prizes for tournaments gathering hundreds of thousands of viewers. There's plenty of choice when it comes to watching people be better than you at video games, yet you might have noticed that there's no racing game that's made it big on the esports scene yet. Just like sports games like NBA 2K or FIFA, these esports scenes really struggle to pull in viewers because why watch video game football or Formula 1 when there's already the real thing? Contrary to CS or League of Legends, where esports tournaments are the one and only place to catch high-level competitive matches with proper broadcasts. But what if there was one racing game standing out from the pack? A competitive racing game that also had the watchability and uniqueness worthy of a major esport. TrackMania Nations ESWC was released by French studio Nadeo in 2006 entirely for free. As mentioned in the game's name, it was specifically developed for the esport tournament organizer ESWC. It's a pretty simple game with very easy physics to grasp, as the only control you'll ever need are accelerating, braking and steering. Although, for the ones who want to invest more time into the game to get better, there is plenty of small tricks that can help you get a lot faster. One of TrackMania's main features is its track editor that allowed you to link blocks and checkpoints together to recreate all those crazy racetracks you dreamed of driving on as a kid. Online was also a very important part of the game, and players would group up on servers full of custom tracks to try and get the best times they possibly could. Soon enough, an independent website where you could upload all your tracks and your personal best replays came online under the name TMX. TMX was the place to go if you wanted to see what were the best times on any given track, and even allowed you to download the world record replay to view or play against it in-game. All these new features really enticed a big part of the slowly growing TrackMania community to battle each other for the most popular track's world record. ESWC 2006 also held the first of many world championships where the best players in the game would compete for big cash prizes, and thus was born the TrackMania esports scene. We are now in 2008. On top of the yearly official ESWC tournament, community events and tournaments also started to happen very frequently, keeping everyone on the game, but not growing it either. 2 years after ESWC's release, TrackMania United Forever comes out with plenty of new environments, including the ESWC one we now know as Stadium. This iteration of Stadium wasn't free, as it was included in the whole United Forever package, though Nadeo would later re-release it for free under the name TrackMania Nations Forever. Nations Forever, or TMNF for short, was a greatly improved version of ESWC with bigger, more stable and easier to host servers, as well as a ton of new blocks added to the editor. TMX was quickly adapted to this new version and the entire community moved on, leaving ESWC pretty much abandoned. On the gameplay side of things, TMNF saw the rise of 4 major styles. Tech, the most popular one, also the style ESWC tournaments are organized on, is pretty simple at first glance. Drift around corners on normal roads to keep as much speed as possible through them. It may sound easy, but getting the perfect line through each and every corner while keeping optimal speed will take you hundreds of hours to master. Dirt, revolving around a low grip surface, has pretty much the same premise as Tech, except the brace will barely ever serve you, as steering and sliding will automatically slow you down, making it tough to keep your speed as high as possible. Full Speed, as hinted by its name, is all about speed. Find the perfect line through long corners, loops and wall rides, holding down the accelerator the entire time. As you progress, full speed may get a bit tricky to improve at, so I will link a speed slide tutorial down below, as this technique is vital to master and understand this style. Finally, my personal favorite, RPG. RPG is more about creativity and map building than about driving. This style will have you drive through mazes full of obstacles, pushing the limits of what the stadium car is capable of. RPG tracks can have world record ranging anywhere from 3 minutes to 2 hours. There are competitions held by the community in every style, so anyone with any taste can be a part of TM Esports, but Tech is by far the most popular one. Most tournaments are held in team format. Organizations like Dignitas and Acer dominated and competed against each other for years to be the best in the game. But once ESWC came around, it would be frequent to see the star players of these teams compete against each other for the coveted title of World Champion in a 4-man free-for-all format. While TMNF was extremely competitive, its physics were completely bug-ridden. Your car would just bump around and lose its speed for seemingly no reason. The game remained very drivable for the most part, but the concerningly high odds of one of these bugs happening to you in any given run gave reasons to some players to think that it would be the death of TrackMania. Fortunately, these bugs didn't demotivate most of the community, and only a few quit because of them. What these bugs did instead was to shine light on TrackMania's actual biggest problem, Nadeo. Nadeo didn't seem to care nor to want to address the issues and remained completely silent and closed off to the community, very rarely communicating what they were working on or on what issues were being addressed in a game seemingly plagued with gameplay ruining bugs. Despite many forum posts being made asking the devs whether they were still working on fixing the game or not, they were usually met with very vague and elusive answers from community managers. To finish it off, Nadeo made a very strange move. Free zone. New players who have not bought United Forever would be able to download Nations Forever and play Stadium for free, but with a little twist to it. When playing online, they would only be able to play 4 tracks in a row before being forced in spectator mode for 1 track. To get rid of this restriction, you would have to switch to a paid account, but it was quickly discovered that you could just type /AFK at the end of track 4 and then exit spectator mode at the beginning of track 5, or just have a server admin force you into player mode. The whole point of Free Zone was to sell more games, but it was so easy to avoid that it probably just did the opposite. That and all the other issues mentioned so far remained unfixed to this day, as Nadeo would be bought by Ubisoft and their focus shifted towards their new project. In 2011, Nadeo would release their new platform, Mania Planet. From this point on, all new Nadeo games as well as community content for them would be hosted there. TrackMania 2 Canyon was the first title available on Mania Planet. Met with a mild reception as most TrackMania players played Stadium exclusively. Also, the $20 price tag wasn't very appealing to them since they had been playing for free for so many years. In early 2013, TM2 Stadium would finally arrive on Mania Planet for just $10, although it didn't offer enough new content for a big part of the community to make the switch from the free Nations Forever. This new title is the 3rd iteration of the Stadium environment. It came with improved graphics, slightly less driving bugs although they would still happen quite frequently, new blocks added to the track editor, and its biggest new feature, the ability to create custom blocks on third-party software and import them straight into the game, giving it endless possibilities for the better or for the worse. TrackMania 2's competitive scene was almost exactly the same as Nations Forever's, the main game changer being the entrance of a TrackMania Tech tournament for Gamers Assembly, France's biggest LAN, which would also later add full speed and dirt tournaments. Along with that, an at the time medium-sized French streamer named Zerator thought it would be fun to organize an open tournament for its community and put some cash prize on it to get pros to play. All the tracks would be built by Zerator himself, who on one hand had no prior competitive mapping experience, and on the other hand didn't care about his maps being competitive, as the purpose of the competition was to be a fun show for his stream. This resulted in the tracks being wonky, with little room for error, and extremely tough to drive consistently. On the tournament day, the pros showed up prepared, stomped the tournament, and provided the stream with an entertaining show that convinced Zerator to keep organizing his cup every year since. The next 2 years would be a pretty uneventful period for TrackMania, Nadeo making only very scarce minor updates, never addressing the physics bugs present ever since 2008, and never communicating or clearly answering forum posts. A lot of people grew tired of this lack of change, which made the player base dwindle down, and a lot of independent tournament organizers started quitting, starting with ESL. 2015 would be the last World Championship hosted at ESWC. Pros and aspiring players alike saw no future in TrackMania, and a lot of them left the game entirely, which was also a huge blow to team tournaments as this was their main player base. In 2016, the ever-growing Zerator Cup truly became TrackMania's main attraction by having LAN finals in Paris, almost selling 2,000 seats and breaking 50,000 viewers on Zerator's livestream. 2017 rolled around, and for the very first time, no official championships sponsored by Nadeo were held. It was TrackMania's lowest low competition-wise. But that wasn't the worst of 2017. Up to this point, big community events like endurance races and True Talent Cup that easily gathered 200 players weekly since TrackMania 2's release had been running smoothly, but that also took a turn for the worst. The disaster that is known as Mania Planet 4 Update was unleashed onto TrackMania, bringing in a whole new netcode that made high-capacity servers extremely unstable, killing off True Talent Cup and endurance races for a very long time, and by the time they returned, long after Mania Planet 4's release, they could only handle about half the capacity they could before. While Mania Planet 4 did fix most physics bugs, which would very rarely happen, it killed off many events the community loved, such as the yearly 24-hour race, which has successfully took place once in the past 3 years, with a low player count. There was just nothing to do on the game anymore, as both the tech scene and community events were dying. Meanwhile, the Raider Cup was still popping off, to no one's surprise, breaking 70,000 viewers on the livestream and selling out 2,500 seats in Lyon, France. Halfway through 2017, a new independent tournament came in and took over the tech scene like a storm, the TrackMania Pro League, instantly shifting tech's focus from teams to solo tournaments, a breath of fresh air for the tech scene, which finally had a big solo online competition with 2 divisions, a proper group stage and playoffs. Season 1 and 2 went pretty smoothly, but Season 3 was when things got serious. Season 3 playoffs in 2018 would be the very awaited return of a LAN TrackMania World Championship, or TMWC for short. The tracks were tough, the players extremely prepared, the matches close, and it would all culminate in TMWC Grand Finals between Kappa, Pac, Carl Jr. and Tween, who gave us what is regarded as the greatest TrackMania match ever. On the more depressing side of the story, throughout 2017 and 2018, Nadeo never broke silence about the unstable servers that killed off so many community events, or if there even was an update in the works, which made many players very frustrated with Nadeo's lack of communication. It didn't seem that they cared too much about the poor state of their game. In early 2019, Nadeo announced that the TrackMania Pro League would not return for a 4th season, meaning that the epic finals that concluded Season 3 also marked the death of Tech as TrackMania's main competitive style. Instead, it would be replaced with the TrackMania Grand League, which would be played by 16 players who had to make it through regional qualifiers. This caused some controversy, as the majority of TrackMania players come from Germany and France, making these qualifiers much harder and packed than, for example, the Nordic one or the North American, which was literally free for Carl Jr., a 3-time back-to-back world champion. The qualifiers tracks also caused some controversy, as the laps were just about a minute long with very easy and basic corners anyone could drive through while keeping very decent speed. The mappers admitted trying to build more competitive tracks, but ended up being forced by Nadeo to build easier to understand tracks. When the season began, Nadeo decided to add what they call an identity to each track. The identity uses a Raider Cup inspired obstacle, meant to be tough or somewhat inconsistent to create upsets, as pro drivers with 10,000 hours plus can easily chain very fast laps in a row without touching a wall on all the easy corners they've seen and driven a billion times before. But that's not all. The point system TMGL would use was the biggest controversy of them all. Nadeo couldn't seem to get anything right. The league's regular season would be split in 10 weekly steps. In each step, the players would drive 6 10-laps tracks. Whoever collects the most points at the end of the step wins it, and each player sees their points added to their grand total. After 6 steps, the top 8 makes it to the playoffs. The little twist that caused so much controversy was that if you get below top 8 on any given track, you lose all the points you've collected so far for the step, meaning that getting 9th or lower on track 5 or 6 made a comeback pretty much impossible. This point system was mostly described as unfair and uncompetitive, but any criticism was quickly dismissed as pointless negativity by Nadeo founder and CEO Hylis. The league played out as planned, and the playoffs were pretty forgettable to say the least due to the tracks being overly simplistic and the mistakes or upsets very rare. This season was dubbed a beta test, and later in 2019, the first official season, TMGL Winter 2020, would begin. Winter 2020 had the exact same tracks issue as the beta season, but a slightly different point system where you could only lose points in the last 3 maps, which lets its main problem of completely preventing comebacks unaddressed. On the bright side, the Raider Cup 2019 was a massive success, breaking 100,000 viewers and selling 7,000 seats. TMGL Winter Playoffs would take place at Lyon Esport, which also had an open TrackMania tournament the Raider participated in. Before the TMGL Grand Finals on stage, the Raider would go live on his Twitch channel where him and Hylis would reveal, to a French audience only, the brand new 4th iteration of Stadium, TrackMania 2020, while the international audience had to be satisfied with an awkward live translation on an obscure Twitch channel. The announcement was made on March 2nd, 2020, and for the next month and a half, no information whatsoever was divulged by Nadeo. Not even a trailer was available. This showed that Nadeo didn't care about pushing their game to a new public outside of France, where it had already reached its peak popularity. Unfortunately, the thing that makes you stay at home happened. The Raider Cup 2020 was cancelled and the game's release date was pushed back to July 1st. Fast forward there, and the week of the game's release went pretty smoothly. An online edition of the Raider Cup was set to take place 2 weeks later. Many big international streamers are streaming and playing against each other on Nadeo's new title. TrackMania has never had this much hype before, but when we needed them the most, Nadeo disappeared. After the Raider Cup, which still reached 100,000 viewers, was over, the game's hype quickly went down. Although it remains more popular than TM2 ever was, its popularity is still pretty insignificant. It became quickly clear that this new Stadium game was a copy-paste of its predecessor, as it presents the same server issues, but 10 times worse, as well as new ones, such as spectator desync. The community is very upset at Nadeo, as this game is significantly more expensive than TrackMania 2 with its subscription model at the cost of €60 for 3 years, and yet its performance is far below expectations. True Talent Cup has just held its last edition, and endurance races will most likely never return, as Nadeo doesn't seem to even know how to fix the server issues that plague the game. Now for the current TMGL season, Fall 2020, the only changes made were to the point system. If you get below top 8 on map 3 and 4, you will lose half your points, but you will still lose all your points for 9th place or lower on map 5 and 6, so it's safe to say that this changes barely fixes any issues. Playoffs were set to end in about 2 hours, with short matches that could theoretically be won in 2 rounds in a format that wouldn't reward anything else than first place finishes. Pro players were so heavily against the proposed playoff format that they wrote an open letter to express their discontent, after which Nadeo threatened to shut down the entire league if the players didn't agree to play. Alright, so to end this video, I'll just give my opinion on TrackMania and its state right now. I still believe that the game has amazing esport potential, but I just don't believe that Hylis will ever accept criticism and make the changes everyone has been begging him to make. Ever since the Raider Cup blew up, his ego, Hylis' ego, is out of this world. He takes any criticism towards the game personally, and he's convinced that the game is more successful than it actually is. Like, of course, when big streamers are playing your game, you're going to have great viewership on Twitch, but that doesn't mean that the viewers will buy or play the game. It doesn't mean that you're doing a great job with the game, because the servers are still broken. Acceleration penalty is still a thing, so obviously you're not. It just means that people sometimes watch your game, and that doesn't make it successful or good. And I think Nadeo, especially Hylis, really needs to understand that. On top of that, I really think that constantly shoving any criticism aside and brushing it off as negativity will never help the game improve, because you're essentially saying that the people that experience your game on a day-to-day basis and get to actually play through all the flaws this game has don't know what they're talking about, and that really makes no sense. I think right now the only way the game would improve is if new people, maybe more open to criticism, take the reins at Nadeo and get everything sorted.